Simplified Speech Episode 182, Time versus Money, featuring Andrew and Cassie. Now today I'm joined by my co-host, Cassie. Hi there, Cassie. Hey Andrew, and hey listeners, hope you're all doing well, and I'm excited to be here today. Cassie, I think we have a wonderful episode lined up for everyone, and I know I say that all the time, but I really mean it this time. Absolutely. I think it's going to be a great episode. And that's because this topic was suggested to us by one of our listeners. And that listener's name is Zahir. And Zahir asked us to talk about the topic of time versus money. And maybe even Cassie debate this topic a little bit. I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. But that's what we're going to do here today. We'll share our thoughts. We'll share our thoughts and our opinions. We'll share our thoughts and our opinions about what we value more in our life. Is time more important? Or is money more important? So thank you to Zahir for the awesome topic suggestion. And yeah, I think this will make for a fantastic episode. This sounds like a really interesting topic.
Yeah, this sounds like a really interesting topic.
Zahir, thanks for the suggestion and can't wait to get into it in a moment. So with that being said, everyone, I think it's time to get started with this episode in earnest. And Cassie, I think we could probably both agree that it would be nice to have an infinite amount of time and also an infinite amount of money. But what makes this topic interesting is that they are both limited to most people, right? Some people out there, some very lucky, privileged individuals have an almost unlimited supply of money, but nobody has an unlimited supply of time. It's the great equalizer, right? Have you heard that expression before, Cassie? That the great equalizer. Yeah, that's an amazing phrase. I've also heard it in relation to death. That death is the great equalizer because everyone dies, unfortunately. Exactly. There's no outrunning it, right? So in the end, everybody will end up dead unless there are amazing breakthroughs in medical technology in the future. But for now, that's the case. Cassie, another saying that comes to mind when I think of this topic is time is money. And I guess I'd like to know, what does that expression mean to you? Time is money. I think this expression is used a lot with people who value money more than time, almost like their life revolves around money and they're used to making a lot of it. And if you're wasting their time, then you're losing them money because for them, every minute of their day is highly scheduled to make more money for themselves. I think especially about people, maybe professionals, who bid a lot for their time. Like think of a high-powered lawyer, a really top level lawyer might charge hundreds or even thousands of dollars per hour for their time. And so if the lawyer had to do a really mundane task, something that just is not a really great return on their time, like maybe writing an email. Maybe that email would take them 15 minutes to do, but really earn them no money for writing that email. Whereas if they spent that 15 minutes with a client and they were charging a couple of $100 an hour, well, then they would have a great return. They would make a lot of money for that 15 minutes meeting with a client. So I think maybe that's what this expression is hinting at, right? Is that when you make a lot of money, your time is very valuable. And so time is equal to money in that situation. But I think all of us probably from time to time have felt like you're doing something that's not really worth your time, right? Have you ever felt like that, Cassie? All the time. I think as adults, a lot of your day is doing stuff that you don't really want to do, but you kind of have to do, but you're not making any money doing it. It's awful. Yeah, and Cassie, we're not those high-powered lawyers that I mentioned earlier, right? We're just teachers, so we live on a modest income. So we live on a modest income, but I think probably most people who have a job and do have an income from time to time, you've done something where you're like, is this really worth my time? But I think probably most people who have a job and do have an income from time to time, you've done something where you're like, is this really worth my time? Like, couldn't I just hire somebody to do this for me? Or couldn't I just, pay somebody to do this for me? I'm thinking of things even like recently. I took a pair of shoes to the dry cleaner to get them to clean my shoes. And I thought, I could do that myself. But it was only, I think, around $5 or so. And then I didn't have to do that task, which, would take, I don't know, probably more than probably more of my time than I would have wanted to, because I'd have to go to the store and buy a brush to clean my shoes. Maybe I'd also have to buy some kind of a cleaning agent or detergent or something. I don't even know what you need to use to clean your shoes. So it's like going to the store that takes time. I have to buy the equipment that takes time. At the end of the day, when I think about that time is money, I just give them to the dry cleaner. He can clean the shoes for me, and it's a win-win. He gets a little bit of business and I save some time. Yeah, exactly. I think this is definitely true the older you get as well. When you're younger, typically you have less money and you also have more time. You have less money, you have more time. So maybe you're willing to ride the slower train that's a few dollars cheaper, or you're willing to take a red-eye flight, or you're willing to pick up some odd jobs that might not pay that well, but they give you some cash. Well, as you get older and have slightly more money, you're like, I'd rather spend some money to save some time instead. Yeah, absolutely. So Cassie, let's not beat around the bush anymore. Let's talk about our answer to this question directly.
question directly.
Directly in your life. Cassie, what's more important to you, time or money?
I think in my early 20s,
I think in my early 20s,
money was more important because I wanted to be financially free, I guess.
I think in my early 20s, money was more important because I wanted to be financially free, I guess. I wanted to be financially free. I wanted to be financially free. 경제적으로 자유로워지고 싶었어. I want to be financially free. She is financially free. My ultimate goal is to be free financially. Being financially free is difficult. Because I wanted to be financially free, I guess. Not
necessarily where I could just quit my job right now.
Not necessarily where I could just I could just quit my job right now.
I could just quit my job right now.
Not necessarily where I could just quit my job right now. Not necessarily where I could just quit my job. I could just quit my job right now and not work forever.
But not work forever.
And not work forever. 그럴 필요는 없어. Not necessarily where I could just quit my job right now and not work forever. Not necessarily where I could just quit my job right now and not work forever. But be able to have options.
And not feel freaked out if, I didn't get a paycheck for a month or two or a few months.
Be able to have options and not feel freaked out if and not feel but I could be able to have options, not feel freaked out if I didn't get a paycheck for a month or two or a few months.
Paycheck for a month or two or a few months. That's
for a month or two or a few months. For a month or two or a few months.
That's financial freedom to me. So yeah.
That's financial freedom to me. That's financial freedom to me. 그게 내가 말하는 경제적 자유. That's financial freedom to me.
My young 20s, definitely money was more important than time.
So yeah, my young 20s, definitely money was more important than time.
But I think now in my later 20s,
early 20, mid 20, later 20, In my later 20s, in my early 30s, mid 30s, late 30s. 그럼 later도 되고 late도 되는 건가? 이런 말도 있고, ish. Later to the late. But I think now in my later 20s,
I'm starting to appreciate time more than money.
I'm starting to appreciate time more than money. I'm starting to appreciate time more than money.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of an inverse relationship.
Inverse relationship. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
It's interesting.
Interesting. It's kind of an
inverse relationship.
It's kind of an inverse relationship.
Interesting. It's kind of an inverse relationship, isn't it?
It's kind of an inverse relationship, isn't it? It's kind of an inverse relationship, isn't it? Inverse relationship.
I'm thinking about my life, and Cassie is something.
I'm thinking about my life, and Cassie, it sounds like your life as well.
Sounds like your life as well.
It sounds like your life as well.
Probably a lot of our listeners can relate to this.
Probably a lot of our listeners can relate to this. Probably a lot of our listeners can relate to this. I can relate to this episode. I can totally relate to this episode. I can't totally relate to this episode. I don't relate to this episode. I can't relate to this episode.
When you're younger, you're in maybe your 20s.
When you're younger, you're in maybe your 20s.
Just graduate from university or get your first job or whatever.
You just graduate from university or get your first job or whatever.
Usually at that time, it feels like we have a lot of time because we're very...
Usually at that time, it feels like we have a lot of time because we're very young.
And we can see our whole life ahead of us.
We can see our whole life ahead of us.
But at the same time, we have a very little amount of money.
But at the same time, we have very little amount of money.
We're just starting our professional life off, right?
Because we're just starting our professional life off, right? Professional life. 직장생활을 시작하다. We're just starting our professional life off. Start off. I started my professional life off in my late 20s. Most people start their professional life in their mid-20s. Professional life. Professional life isn't easy. Professional. I don't want to start professional life off. I don't want to start my professional life off. I started my professional life off in my late 20s. 이렇게 해야지 해석이 잘 돼.
So you have a lot of time and you have a little bit of money.
So you have a lot of time and you have a little bit of money. A little bit of money. A little bit of money.
Cassie, I'm about a decade older than you, or maybe.
And Cassie, I'm about a decade older than you. I'm older than you. I'm a decade older than you.
Even more.
잠깐만, decade.
More. I can't remember, but I'm.
Maybe even more. I can't remember, but I'm.
Several years older than you.
But I'm several years older than you. But I'm several years older than you.
And so I'm further ahead in my career than you, but you.
So I'm further ahead. I'm further ahead in my career than you, but
you've probably been on a similar path.
But you've probably been on a similar path.
But you've probably been on a similar path and
on a similar path. You've probably been on a similar path.
That is as time goes on.
시간이 가면서. That is as time goes on, you know.
You get older.
older.
Work your way up the corporate ladder.
You work your way up the corporate ladder,
so to speak.
And
you start earning more money.
And you start earning more money.
Also, you have less time ahead of you.
And also, you have less time ahead of you. Less days ahead of you, right?
I'm almost 40 years old, and
now I'm almost 40 years old, and you know,
that's what we call midlife.
That's what we call midlife. You know, that's what we call midlife.
That's kind of a good outlook as well, because
that's kind of a good outlook as well, because
really, when you think about the quality of life,
when you think about the quality of life, when you're past
75 into your later years in life,
when you're past 75 into your later years in life, into your later years in life. your past, your later years. 인생의 말년이 되었을 때, your past 75 into your later life, and into your later years in life, you can't really do as much.
You can't really do as much, right?
You can't really do as much, right?
Doubt I'll be traveling the world as an 80-year-old, for example.
I doubt I will be traveling the world as an 80-year-old, for example.
So the options that are available to you
So the options that are available to you
as you get older are just
as you get
fewer
older
and fewer and fewer.
are just fewer and fewer and fewer. So the options that are available to you as you get older are just fewer and fewer and fewer. The options are available to you are just fewer and fewer and fewer. 점점 더 적어질 거야. The options that are available to you are just fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer. So
yeah, it means that the older you get, the more you spend growing your career.
The older you get and the more you spend growing your career,
the more money you can earn.
The more money you can earn,
but the less time you have to enjoy that money with. So
but the less time you have to enjoy that money with.
You can earn, but
earn
with. So that's what I mean by an inverse relationship.
So that's what I mean by an inverse. That's what I mean by an inverse relationship.
And you're segueing off of this.
And you're segueing off of this.
In your opinion,
what do you think the balance is
between time and money?
Between time and money. What do you think the balance is between time and money?
Would you rather stay an extra hour at work if you could get overtime pay these days? Or
would you rather stay an extra hour at work if you could get overtime pay these days? Would you rather stay an extra hour at work if you could get overtime paid these days?
Or do you think you would rather, go home early and do your activities?
Or do you think you would rather, go home early and do your activities? I'd rather stay an extra hour at work. I'd rather.